Yeah, so my twin flame, Greg passed away in January 22nd of 2021. And he died due to an overdose. Um, he was in recovery, though, when he passed. It was this big convoluted story about, like, he was in a program called Recovery Court in Wake County that was supposed to be responsible for his recovery, his treatment. Um, they dropped the ball. He was away for 3 months as part of the program, came back during COVID. They, like, he legally, he was supposed to be, like, on this medication, and they didn't give it to him in time. Like, the day that he died is the day he was supposed to see them to get that medication that would have saved his life.
Is
So,
like what kind of medication? Like,
Suboxone.
okay. And he couldn't get the Suboxone?
No, because he had to wait to have an appointment, and because it was all done through recovery court, he couldn't just go to any doctor he wanted. He had to wait for that to happen.
Ugh.
Yeah. So it's like a bunch of bureaucracy and craziness. And like the night before he passed, he was all upset, and we were in a big fight, and it was just not good times. So, like, the last voicemails I have of him are actually really bad, like, not good times. So when he passed, I had to really work through just that, woulda, shoulda, coulda, like, oh man, he died on bad terms, and like, that means that, oh no, now I'm just screwed. Like, I instantly knew that that wasn't true, even though that thought creeps back in, right? Like, and so I had to really heal, reinforce that, and ground that in, that it's not based on that last day or two, right? And yeah, that led to this whole reawakening, and I just knew, I can't explain it, but I knew that he would return. And 5 to 6 months later, he technically did. So I'm now in a relationship with someone who has his same energy, and it's been pretty wild. So that's my story.
So did the medium tell you he would return, or you just knew it yourself?
I knew it myself. Like, I just knew that, like, it wasn't over. And just his personality, kind of like Rhonda said before, where, like, the person Greg was, he was so, he loved, like, breaking the impossible, right? And breaking limits and disproving possibilities. And I know he'd never give up. So if it is possible, I knew he'd do it. I got it confirmed by a local reader and by a medium and a past life regressionist. But
Oh, wow.
all that really did, like, that was just confirmation. It was kind of like, something. Like, the other day I had an analogy for this, that if a couple is pregnant, you don't know what the baby's going to look like. So for those 9 months, you're forming this bond, this connection with this baby. You might have ideas that it'll look similar to the parents, but you don't know. You don't have that absolute truth, that fact. And I just lost my train of thought because this is so much. Yeah, and no matter, okay, here's what it was. So, like, an OBGYN can tell you that, oh, your baby's likely going to have this trait or that trait. But at the end of the day, that doesn't actually change anything about what you know, right? Because what you know to be true is what's in your heart. And that's usually what's true when the baby's born, and you see how the baby turns out. So that's the only example that I've come up with to explain it so far.
Wow. So, and he came back quick then?
Super quick. Yeah, it's kind of, I sometimes feel weird saying that it was, 5 to 6 months, because most people are just, like, beginning to fully grieve in that amount of time. But the weirdest thing is I didn't go through like a normal grief process. It was always a continuation. It's very strange.
So, John, like, was he going through some kind of turmoil at the time that you think that this change happened?
So John had just recently gotten out of a relationship, an on and off again relationship with this crazy girl who just, yeah, that's a whole other story. and he was actively using substances. And I also was in recovery too along this whole time. And so he was just at this perfect point in his life too, where things were changing. He also lost a loved one, former ex-girlfriend, who passed away in similar circumstances that were just really crappy. You know, it's this beautiful, amazing person who passed too soon. And yeah, just everything kind of lined up. It's very, very strange.
Wow.
I get what you say when you say that, because when Jim left, I thought, well, if anybody can get back, he will, and he'll be back.
Yeah, there's that inner knowing, like it carries over, the personality carries over even after they passed, right? There's some things that happen at the soul level.
Well, I was hoping that mine. So my story, just try to do the quick version because it's kind of a long story. But I met mine, Rhonda. His name's Ben, and I met him. 20. It was like 2001, and he worked at the club that I worked at as a bartender, and my ex-husband trained him, and he was just the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. Still, and so we learned out later that we had like huge crushes on each other, and he befriended my husband, so he would come over to our house and hang out, and we would, I guess, just both be like talking, wishing. But he was a gentleman. He wasn't that type of guy that was trying to, and he didn't know how horrible my marriage was. So we just kind of kept in touch over the years, found him on MySpace and then Facebook, and then ran into him a couple times over the years, and just, I would see he had a girlfriend, and then one day he disappeared, and I found out he was in prison. This crazy, it's because this fisherman found 20 kilos of cocaine floating on a buoy off the coast of Panama City Beach, and he decided to sell it because he had contacts, because he was in the weed business, and through his best friend since childhood. So the fisherman went and told like an undercover police officer, and of course they all pointed there was a couple that was on the boat when they found the cocaine, and then a guy that Ben barely knew introduced him, that he knew that he was the stupidest thing. He's like, that was not very smart. But anyways, he ended up, the first time he had been arrested, he was 37, and they gave him 15 years because he had a gun, and which is like a mandatory 5, and then there was some pills involved, and then so he got 15 years in prison. And when I found out just by Googling him one day, because he wasn't on social media, I was like, oh my God, I knew he had a small boy. I was so just devastated. But I was married again. I had left the first guy, thank God. I was married again, and I didn't know anybody in prison ever. And it seemed, I was like, well, I need to write them. And I was like, well, what's my husband going to say about that? So I just didn't write them, and I kind of forgot until I got divorced again. And I was just like lonely, and I was just divorced maybe 9 months in 2020. And he sends me a Facebook request, and I'm like,
I have to stay here.
Okay. I'm like, I know you're not supposed to have Facebook in prison, right? In a federal prison. So I Googled it, and it said, well, you can have family, or they just got it illegally, which is what he did. And so I thought maybe they had let him out. I was like, oh my God, they let him out. So I messaged him, and he said, well, I'll call you later on tonight after they count us. And I was like, oh yeah, he's still in there, because he has to be counted. And so he called me that night, and we just talked and talked. And I told him everything about, my abuse, and that the guy that was his friend. And he was like, oh my God, I wish you would have told me. And anyways, we just hit it off, and just completely started this amazing love affair, like nothing you've ever seen. But right 2 weeks after I met him, COVID shut everything down. So there was no visits. So I don't think I saw him until a year later. And then we couldn't touch or hug or anything. It was just miserable. And then finally he got moved, and they lifted the restrictions. Finally we got to hug, but then we couldn't do any, you know what I mean? It was just like we'd get in trouble for, and so but I saw him as often as I could. And then, we just prayed and prayed and prayed. I wish that we just would have manifested him coming home, but now I understand that this was just, in the cards. I believe in, but I think that's part of the reason that we found each other and had this amazing love, and for some reason weren't able to like be like normal couples and like have sex and all that stuff. He was a little man whore before he went to prison. So for him, it was really
Your
weird
dog
not
agreed.
having.
He goes, woof. Yes, he was.
Yeah. So back then, but he never loved anybody is the thing. That's why he was just like, but I just never loved anybody before. I didn't care. I just never felt that way like I do for you. And it's just so different. So, yeah, so I was planning on going to see him in October, and one of the inmates called and said that he had fallen off the bed and got this traumatic brain injury. And I was just like, what? And like Lisa said, we were on that. We weren't on the best terms either. We never really. Anytime we fought, we would always make up. But he was in such a dark depression phase, and I found out that he was using drugs in there to self-medicate. So that's, of course, not going to raise your energy level or your vibration. And just the negativity, and he was just, something was so off with him. And so he would get mad at me for getting irritated because he was acting different, which of course now makes sense. But so come to find out, somebody hit him in the mouth in a stupid fight. He hit his head against the brick wall, knocked himself out, wouldn't go seek medical, and went and laid on the top bunk of his bed. And then I guess he had a concussion or got dizzy, rolled off backwards and smacked it so bad this time. It was just blood everywhere. So it was bad the second time, and his eyes are wide open. So they take him to try to get medical. And all we know is I don't know what they did, because they made all the guys leave the room, and the ambulance didn't come for an hour and 11 minutes. And then he somehow got med flighted to the hospital 45 minutes away 5 hours later. So it was definitely an oversight situation with the prison. Like they pretty much let him die, it sounds like to me. So, I was completely, and his mother, and she had so much hope that he would come home, and she was already struggling with their son being in prison for 6 years. And we were just they finally let us see him for 2 hours, but it was like a visit. They were like, okay, time's up. And I'm like, oh really? And so I'm like, we tried to get married and they wouldn't let us, and there was a whole nightmare situation with that. And it almost killed me with the grief. Like I started just drinking, like I quit for a month and a half, and this is how I get rewarded, right? Never quit drinking before in my whole life, like 25 years in my adult life since I could. And finally quit a month and a half later. My love of my life gets just ripped away from me before we even got to be together. So I was like Jim Morrison up in the hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee for a day. I mean, I raided their freaking little wine fridge or whatever, and went to the hospital, tried to run at him, but there's a guard, even though he's brain dead. And I'm like, he's dead. What the hell? Wouldn't let me see him. They were going to call security. Anyways, I was just completely devastated. But I started looking more about twin flames because we had read books and we knew that we were, and we had discussed it. I didn't know it was I'm learning more about the other spiritual things that go with the twin flame thing. We just knew that we were the same soul. We knew all that. But now I wish we would have done the work, but coulda, shoulda, woulda, just, you know what I mean? Coulda, shoulda, woulda. So that's pretty much my story. And this was October 31st on Halloween that he died. So yeah, it's been I'm trying to not grieve because I want to be near him, but it's been so hard because I just love him so much. So
Have you
I
done
totally get
any
that.
energy work like with him, like after he passed? Like I know you didn't get to do, you didn't even get to physically be with him. Like, have you tried to work on things now, like after he passed at all?
what was you kind of cut up on the last?
Have you worked with him after he passed at all, like energy work?
Well, went to a medium and got a bunch of messages, but uh, and then I've been meditating lately and connecting with him that way. You know, I talk to him. I talk to him when I'm running. I talk to him all the time. Um, you know, so I'm just kind of learning now, like, you know, where he might be. Like, you know, it's just, I just have gone through hell because it's like I told Lisa before, it's just the no closure because there's this investigation and they haven't given us any all the information I had second. It's like one death. It's bad enough having someone just being, you know, dying, but then it's just the injustice that it's like another form of, you can't, there's no closure, you know.
I agree.
Especially when the uh, prison is taking no responsibility and they're trying to cover it up. And so, but now I have I this is a really good thing that's happened is because he was just wanted to be in an advocate and um, prison reform, and through me just reaching out to these outlets, I think that I've been invited with Ben's sister. Oh, and his mother died 2 months after him from a broken heart, Rhonda. It was sepsis, but I'm pretty sure her body just couldn't fight, you know, the infection. And but I did through FAM, which is Families Against Mandatory Minimums. I'm pretty sure that they're going to invite me and Molly, and this is top secret, she said, but for they're doing an event on oversight, and they want us to meet with these legislature people, lawmakers, and so I mean, I think that's now I have something to look forward to, a purpose, you know, for him to work through me. You know, it's a reason to stay sober, you know, because I've got to be taken seriously. And so that's pretty much my story.
Well, y'all's story is kind of somewhat more similar than mine. Is really mine is really kind of bizarre because we just met in 2011 after I went through a horrible divorce. I was married to a very abusive person for 29 years, and we just had everything in common. It was like looking, I mean, it was like everything I ever dreamt of in one package: looks, intelligence, musical talent, loving, affectionate, everything. And so we married in 2017, and then just immediately in 2020, he came home sick the day of COVID. He'd always been very healthy, he'd never been sick. Said he didn't feel well, and we didn't have any clue what it could be. Long story short, he passed from cancer on the 21st of June. Now it was at this point things start really getting strange. All kinds of paranormal activity started happening. I had gone to the lake to just think the lake where we used to go to ride our boat, to our boat, and took my camera out to see if I could even find him anywhere in an orb. Maybe an orb would come through the camera. I was sitting on the rock and I begged the spirit guides and angels. I looked up to heaven and I said, if you care anything about me at all, then show me he's around. Started walking up the hill. And when I got to the top of the hill, there was a red cardinal perched on the passenger's mirror of my car. And I knew instantly that was Jim's energy. And I reached my hand out and I said, Jim, Jim. And this bird stayed for 2 hours, even after it was dark. And I was just so fat. I had him on video. I thought, you know, I had enough sense to take out my camera and start recording this. So 4 nights later, I decided I'd go back to that lake. I didn't really think I would see the bird. But when I got there, I drove up and there he was, waiting right on the kind of the perch thing. They have these logs that have a rope that show you where to park. And he was sitting on that log. And he again stayed till past dark, usually about an hour and a half. This bird stayed. And I've got all the video of him flying around me and flying up on this car. He kept going to the mirror, and I knew there's a message in that mirror. He's on that mirror, and Jim did ride on the passenger side of the car because I've told him he drove so terrible that it was a deal breaker unless I drove. But anyway, and then that happened 11 more consecutive times.
What?
This bird visited me every day down there. It got so unbelievable that it started drawing a crowd on Facebook. So then a few nights, and this was the same month that this happened, something woke me up and said, get up right now and start writing these numbers down. I want you to write his birth date down and your birthday down. Long story short, there's lots of parts of it. I'm just hitting over the high spots to get to a conclusion, to keep my story in line with y'all's in time, space. But long story short, I started decoding numbers and started saying, I play instruments by patterns. I have visual patterns that once I see the code in the pattern, I can read that like a blind person reads Braille. So after 3 years and probably 5 or 6 full spiral bound notebooks, front and back, I decoded that we were the same soul and the soul and who the soul was, and we look just like him if you combine our looks. But then someone started contacting me in the spring. Well, I was pretty certain that we were the reincarnation of this very famous mathematician, by the way. And isn't that strange? And before Jim passed away, he was working a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle, and the last game we played was Scrabble. And that's letters and numbers. And the puzzle is signifying you'll be doing a puzzle with letters and numbers. He was telling me there, his higher self was telling me this will be about letters and numbers. And of course it would be, because we were a French philosopher, famous mathematician. And a child intuitive told me one time, just over the phone, his mother asked him, he said, can you give Miss Rhonda a reading? And I thought, I'm not interested in all that. I mean, I thought, okay, go ahead, and then the kid said, and this child spoke with, he might have been 12 in his body, but this wasn't a 12-year-old speaking. When he spoke, he said, well, actually, it was, and I forgot how many hundreds of years ago. I know for a fact it was over 400 years ago, but I don't remember if that was the exact number. He said, and you were very wealthy, and you lived alone and was very happy. I said, well, and you were a man. I said, my God, first off, I don't want to be a man. Second of all, how could I be wealthy if I'm living alone? And it was hundreds of years ago. What in the world was I, a lumberjack? And then this is before I started doing the numbers. And then when I did the numbers, I thought, oh, there you go. That's how you did it, because you were famous French philosopher and you came from a very wealthy family. And I've had lots of issues with my mother. Is that same person today. She's very wealthy, but she's very, very unsharing and very uninvolved. She won't help me out. She won't help anyone out, really. So I had to come to terms with the fact that, well, that's because you were very greedy in that life where you were very wealthy. I even met the woman that I had a child with. Her name was Helena, and we had a daughter back in early 1600s. And the woman that was Helena, who worked as a house servant, was Helen Reddy in this life. Helen Reddy, and she kept the same name. And guess what? When I went to work this week, this woman's name that I'm working with's name is Christina. I came home and looked up Queen Christina because Rene Descartes worked with Queen Christina the last year of his life. And this woman looks identical to her, and her looks are succinct. So it gave me the confirmation, there you are, there she is. And when you come back, you do keep your same pretty much physical looks, because that's in your DNA. And you gain as you enter these different realms. You are more refined because of your life lessons. The more refined the more refined you come across. That's why you become more youthful, or why Christ appeared as total light. He was more refined. Or I'm sure Christ was such a good looking man that even at the time people were probably thinking, oh yeah, baby, come over here, because he was a beautiful soul. And so I started seeing these correlations. Now, the thing that has really, I think he's back. I honestly feel he's back, but I'm honestly kind of not knowing how he would come back, or how I would even know that if their memories are wiped out. Because strangely enough, there's too many weird things that are going on with this person that just started contacting me in March. And so it's been a journey of, I thought I would die. I asked God several times, if you feel so that it's so necessary for me to go through such pain, then obviously I don't know what's going on, and I'm not doing something right, and I can't get it. And it's time for me to come on over and let the guides give me a debriefing. And I've picked myself up, and somehow and it's interesting that you said you were bartending, because that's what I changed my career to, was to bartend.
Oh, hey, Gina, I muted you because it was giving feedback, and only you can unmute yourself now. Yeah, sorry. There you
Oh, yeah, it was Ben was the bartender.
Oh, he was the bartender?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, anyway, I went into bartending, and then it even got even more bizarre, because when I started working as a bartender, I started realizing that I could see things that normal people can't see. And so this whole thing has been kind of mind blowing, because I've not really had anyone who understood that twin flame is not the same as just these initial let me call them preparatory relationships. They're not the same. Twin flame relationships have a whole different level of energy.
You gotta unmute again, Gina. Or turn your sound down, your volume down, and that should get rid of the reverb.
What about now?
That seems better.
I wish I had I left my AirPods at work. I was going to ask you, you said you were one person. Well, wouldn't there be two of you?
I said we were one person
In the
at
past life.
1600. We were one person.
So that I didn't know you. I thought you were always two people.
No.
Oh, because one person hasn't incarnated, right?
No, listen, here's how I understand it. Okay, now this is how I read the numbers and read it. You're one soul.
Right.
Once that soul reaches a certain level, that soul the energy is so great that it can split into its counterpart and have two energetics, meaning two halves, but they're each whole. That's thus the number 11. Each whole part comes together to make one number. The Bible calls marriage becoming one.
Mm-hmm.
One. You're one. At one month is the word atonement. So when the soul comes down, let's say I'm Renee, okay? I'm in 1650, I die. Now there's some reason I'm going to come back. Let's say it's to bring philosophy back on the face of the earth, okay? Because I was a famous philosopher, and I'm deeply into philosophy, and I have been for years, long before I knew about Renee. I didn't even know who Renee was. If you would have said to me Renee Descartes 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had a clue, and probably you guys don't. But if you look him up, you'll find him on Google, and you can read all about him. I didn't know who he was. He was just the only person Jim ever quoted. And my middle name is the same, Renee.
And you said it's Renee?
Renee, yes.
Wasn't that long?
What do you Google?
You Renee Rene Descartes, Descartes. And so anyway, I know that's a little much. I'm just saying that the twin flame, I want to point out that I came from a fundamentalist Baptist doctrine, and I totally surpassed that. I went all the way into Hinduism. I went all the way I even bordered on atheism there for a while. I went into every single belief there could be. There is absolutely God. There absolutely is the higher power. There absolutely is. The Bible is true, but it's a metaphysical book about human consciousness. And we do come down into two different people. So when Renee died, I was explaining, he didn't come in back to the earth all at once. Energy's too great. So he comes in as Jim in 1951, which is exactly 301 years after Renee died. And Jim came in on 310. 301. There's the markers. 301 years. His birthday's 310. Now,
I love
here's
how
another.
the spirit gives us these clear, defining, it's like patterns so perfect, like you can't ignore them. They're beyond coincidence. But like then there's other situations where like I have some weird stuff where my main guide right now was Greg and Mai's paternal father figure, who was our father, between 30 and 40 AD, which is when Jesus was crucified in ancient Rome.
Oh, wow.
We were in ancient Rome. And it's just weirdness. And like the other past lives that we've seen, all of them that I've seen, we were split. And I did go like in this regression, went back to that birth or, the inception point of why we even became connected. And for me, it was we were of the same monadic soul energy. But yeah, everyone's case is different. That's why I like that we're talking, because it's not, some people are like, oh, well, twin flames, you get 3 incarnations, you can't share past lives, da 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 da. And like, no, like twin flames are here to break the limits of the impossible. Like we're no, like come on. So
that's it. You just said it. It's to break the limits of the possible, and I'm possible is what the word impossible is. I'm possible. Mm-hmm. And I think when you said the split, okay, the figure 8 is associated with infinity. And it goes with God also equals 8 in numerology. So does holy matrimony. So does sacred sex. All of those equal 8 in numerology. Now, I want to tell you something. My guides told me about the number 8. I said, how could he be in me? Because they kept saying, your twin flame is in you. And I thought, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. What do you mean? He's in me. I miss him. I don't miss me. I miss him. I can't make love with me. I mean, it ain't the same. I mean, I don't understand that nonsense. That sounds like just junk y'all are trying to say to make me feel better. But then when I decoded it all, it showed that he was, in fact, in me and I was in him. And my mind still doesn't wrap around that. But there's something true about it because the numbers reveal that. Now, going back to figure 8. Notice the figure 8 comes together in the center and there's a meeting point. So a figure 8 comes in and it goes back out. The toroidal field that we live in comes in and it goes back out. So reincarnation and Renee and reincarnation, and by the way, RNA. It sounds like I'm all saying kind of the same thing. Reincarnation, Renee, RNA. See, it's giving me hints there in phonics. Phonics is very important. You have to listen to phonics and throw spelling out the door. But you have to keep the letters in order to decode it. That's why there's a silent G and a silent H, because it has to fit numerically. And God is such a mathematician. He goes, ho, ho, ho. We have to have this word go with this one, though. So we have to add a silent K. Because it has to all fit together. And you go, why do we have these words like neighbor and wait? that have no ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous to have a G and a H in
I
those
think it's
words.
ridiculous when people like with baby names when they try to do the opposite. Like with Everly, my daughter's name, I spell it. Well, okay, I guess I do it the dumb way. It's Everly, a Y at the end. But other people they do like Raleigh. The city Raleigh has the GH at the end, so they'll spell Everly that way. But I'm like, no, you don't have
That
to
is
do
such a pet peeve of
that.
mine, by the way.
Yeah. Ugh.
Well, then
But why is the P in pneumonia is what I want to know.
Pneumonia.
The P of pneumonia.
It has to have a certain frequency, and so God knows how to program everything to have a specific frequency because He's the greatest mathematician and computer programmer. Your mind can't even touch the surface of how intelligent this is, because this was so intelligent as I was decoding it that I would ask my guides to stop sometimes because it was too much. It was overloading my circuitry, because I thought this is so absolutely intricate and perfect that I'm not perfect enough to look at it. I'm about to throw up because I'm not an energetic match for the perfection I'm looking at on my paper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. And then when I realized, okay, what he is your energy dupe. Okay, so now he dies, right? So here's the thing. When they die, that's coming back into the center point of the figure 8. That's the center point. So now you're both one person right now. Now, if they come back out and you meet them in another body, they've started on the outward loop where you're 2 again. That's the 8. You're coming in. You're going to meet up. You're going to come in at that center point, and guess what? You're going to cross up. And you're going to start going out. But it's going to loop right back around again, and that's why it's called eternity. It loops right back around.
What do you think about the theories that talk about breaking? Because some people think that we are, well, there's so many ways to look at this. Some people believe that we are like essentially stuck and we're trapped in this lower vibrational thing, and that's, humanity is plagued with it, and and that's this desperate attempt for ascension. And then there's, the biblical perspective that that no, like it's not that we're stuck, it's that there's a trajectory to human evolution and so on and so forth. Like my friend, she saw a vision where she calls it the machine, and she saw everything kind of feeding into itself and then coming back out, and she's saw all the different possibilities, and she has children, so she saw like just the most horrible scenes of her children. I try to remind her those are possibilities, that's not reality,
right?
And but it still traumatized her, and so she thinks that we are stuck, and I'm like, we're not stuck. What you saw was that closed loop system. That doesn't mean there's nothing outside of it. So what do you think about breaking that? Or, what do you? Yeah, I don't know.
I think that I've struggled with that question because at times I've asked myself, they talk about, well, there's going to be a timeline split, and some people are going to be on the good timeline, some people are going to be on the bad timeline. And I'm like, oh my God, did I get off on the bad timeline? And then there's the train of thought that the the religious people have. Well, Jesus is coming back soon. It's going to be a rapture. I've never seen the world be so bad. That kind of talk, which I don't believe that. I think it's a way that they're seeing it in sort of like an underdeveloped way. They see it out of fear, and I don't think it's that way. I think we're evolving toward higher states in the spiral, and that we spiral up, and we can spiral back. We can slide down. If you were going up one of those spirally water park slides, you could go back up it. You would flip, and
Rhonda, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's crazy because that book I told you to read, that's what it's like. Okay, this is so interesting to me. She's talking about all these different levels, right? Like she hypnotizes these people that are in between death and life in their past lives, and I've been really interested in pyramids, and like, you would just have to be ridiculous to think that those were made back then so perfectly, and the way that it lines up and everything. Well, one thing that she said that was just so interesting to me was that she put God, like if it were on a like the different planes, like if there were, like, it was a pyramid that was inverted, and so we would be on like one of the bottom levels, and as it goes on, God is at the very top, but the very top goes on for infinity. And so you're just trying to get up these different levels. And then in that book, she explains where you are on the different levels and like what could be like the version of hell. And I just was like, this makes, like, Jesus, the was like supposedly like on the 9th level, and the 10th is the highest you can get. And I just really think you would like this book.
Yes, I've looked at a lot of Dolores Cannon material,
Love
and
her. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, she is. That's correct. I described it even before I saw her material as being somewhat like a large skyscraper, and there's elevator, and you can get on the elevator and you can get off on the basement. Don't want to go there. It's ugly, concrete blocks, and they keep all the trash down there. Or you can get on the ground floor. Now, if we go to the basement, we can call that hell. It's ugly down there. There's nothing pretty down there. We don't have windows. We can't see out. It's just trash they keep in the basement. So we can go up to the ground floor. We can be with the populace, with everybody else, right? They're doing their day to day. We can start to go up a few floors and we find the metaphysical people. Oh, we do our chakras and we clean and we can get on the elevator and rise on up a few more floors. And we might discuss, I don't know, something with the ascended masters in our minds. Or we might even get up further and we've purified our state. See, each one, you can't get on the floor just because you wanna. Oh, I just want to go to the 6th floor. Oh, sorry. Have you got a pass to get to the 6th floor? Have you done the work to get to floor 6? Because you're not coming on floor. Now, if you can get to floor 6, you have the pass to go to floor 5, 4, and 4, 3, 2, 1. But you don't have the pass to get to 7, 8, 9, and 10 without you earn them. You will earn this, and this is decoded in your DNA with every right action, with every right thought, and every right action every act of goodwill, every truth that you tell will unlock. It has the light is what does it. And that's an act of light. So when you make an act of light, let's say, I love you, you're beautiful. That's an act of light, isn't it? Because you're shedding goodwill and positive upliftment. You're giving your energy freely to someone else to uplift them. So you get a little cell turned on in your DNA. And you understand something that you didn't understand previously. Now you understand. And you don't have to go through those lessons that brought you to that, wherever that was keeping you blocked out of floor 7 or floor 8, whatever. So I think we're progressing along a spiral. And you know what? And here's the song. It gave us a hint. The Stairway to Heaven. It's a stairway. It's
the DNA.
Yes,
right?
It's the DNA, and you cannot destroy DNA. It's the Akashic records of your soul. That's what DNA is. And the A probably even stands for Akashic, because it's in both the DNA and the RNA. And the RNA, R has to do with return.
I almost want to ask about let's not answer this, but I just have to, like, the whole theory that the COVID vaccines affect our DNA and how that's, reptilian and evil people. And I won't go there, but just have to throw that in there.
I have wondered that myself, because I've wondered too, I have the smoking issue, right? And I'd wondered, Rhonda, have you just screwed up your DNA so that your reality's nothing but a cluster F of discombobulation you don't understand? But you understand an awful lot. You even impress yourself understanding it, but your mind won't accept it. It's like my higher self will speak it. I'm speaking it to you all, but I can tell you right now, it's hard for me to accept. Does that make any sense to you?
Absolutely.
My mind can't accept. I can tell it to you all. I can channel the information to you all, but can I accept it? It's hard.
That's what I made a bad attempt at trying to say earlier about the whole, okay, if a couple gets pregnant and, the baby's forming, you don't know exactly what it's going to look like or whatever, and a doctor, the best expert could tell you what the baby's going to look like. You could go on a little app, and say, oh, let's combine the pictures of the parents and see what it spits out, like as a passing the time type thing. But no matter what you get, you're never going to actually, it does you no good, because you yourself have to accept whatever you choose to believe.
Right. And that's why it's kind of hard. Here's the things that I think that are valuable in discussing this with a lot of people. These situations, though we all share different stories about our twin and how we came together or how they passed, still we're sharing very similar, the number patterns, the bird spirit animals, or whatever has come to you. The lights would go off in my house, came up to full brightness one night, and they're on a dimmer switch. Off is down. They came up to full brightness. I could go on and on about all the countless, and especially with the numbers, things that you're like, how would that happen? Maneuvering of my computer, maneuvering of things on my computer, messages. It's like, what? And do angels talk like this? Because I get a lot of videos, and they're from angels, and they talk with a high voice. And I just wondered. I mean, I'm not making fun of them. I'm just saying, I'm really not. I mean, I love angels, but I do get a lot of angel videos, and they seem to have a really high voice. And God wants you to know you're on the verge of a breakthrough. Miracles are coming your way. Your loved one is thinking of you all the time and wishes he had never left, and now sees. I mean, but it's all these same messages. Does the universe has to know that I'm going to see them? Has to know I'm going to equate it with this journey.
Hey, let me tell you a quick story. When I was coming home from doing my vision board, one thing that I told the warden in the visiting room, I mean the hospital, when Ben was on the ventilator and dead. Basically, I didn't know he was dead. He was a donor, a heart donor. Oh, he's here with us too. See, he's on my neck. I put him in this glass necklace.
Hold him higher. Hold him a little higher. Higher. Okay. There.
Higher.
Oh, that's beautiful.
See a heart. Okay.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Thank you. So he's always, I mean, he goes wherever I go. I run with him. I take him everywhere. But I didn't realize that he was considered dead that day that I was there, which is another thing that really hurt me, because I was like, couldn't a doctor have explained that to us, that they have to declare you dead when the brain scan, when you're an organ donor, or else it's a morality thing, or else the doctor is killing you to essentially give your heart to somebody else. But I told the warden in there, because I was just so grief stricken. And I said, I want you to know that you gave him a death sentence. And this man, this is the truth, would not let me kill an ant on the visiting table where we eat. Like, you go in there and you get snacks and chips. And I thought it was just hilarious, but so sweet. And I saw this like couple ants, and I went to kill him, and he grabbed my hand. He was like, no, Gina. I said, what? And he said, every creature has a purpose. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, okay, sweetheart, I won't kill the ants. I'm like, I mean, I kind of would like to eat my chips without ants, but I was like, whatever. I told my mother that, and she was like, well, that is just weird. She's from Colombia. She said, that is just weird. What about rats? What about snakes? Well, when I was coming home from my friend's house, I was listening to the Dolores Cannon book, and there's one whole part was where the person that was hypnotized, she was like, well, why do we have to have, because she was going down on the, who's on the animal plane and who's, going down the lower planes. And she said, why do we have to have things like ants and wasps? I mean, and she kind of chuckled, Dolores, and the woman explained, she said, because and she said all these creatures, even the ant, has a purpose. It was exactly what Ben said that day. And he had never read this book, so he had probably read some Buddhism or something that maybe was similar.
Native
But it was
Americans,
like,
they
oh my
believe that too. The natives and
God.
tribals.
Yeah. And so that was just like, oh my gosh, I had to call my friend. I was like, it's exactly what he said was, they said that's why you should, not that you want them in your kitchen or anything, but that in the
In your
next,
kitchen.
in the next, when the earth, comes back, it shifts or whatever, that they're going to eventually disappear. But right now they serve some kind of purpose, but eventually ants and these pests won't, and they won't be there. But I just thought that was so neat, so I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I don't kill bugs or anything anymore either. Even if they get out of in my car trapped with me, I'm like, oh, let you out of here. I just, and even the rat, oh, he's not a rat, he's a mouse. I'm sure he's probably not a rat, but anyway, somebody lives in my kitchen at night, and I think, well, poor thing. I hope he moves away soon because he's really kind of a mess to clean up after. But I don't want to kill him.
I know, and that's what I couldn't believe. That's what I was telling the warden. I was like, why him? I mean, he's not Jeffrey Dahmer. He wouldn't let me kill an ant, and now he's dead. I mean, because what? Like, why? But now I've learned. I'm sure that it was in his contract. I mean, I think that Ron, to listen to this, he told me that there was this medium. He had a 15-year sentence, and he was 6 years, almost 7 years into it, right? And so he had a long ways to go. And there was this clairvoyant inmate. He was this Mexican guy because he had tattoos of the Dia de la Muerte on his legs. And he explained to me that he got those because after he had this reading, he wasn't really into that stuff. But the man, he was like, why not? They don't have anything else to do. He's like, give me a reading. And the Mexican inmate said, okay. And he said, you are a very good man, and they know that. And he said, I know that you just began your sentence. He was about 2 years in. He said, but I'm seeing that in about 5 or 6 year mark, these doors are going to open up and set you free. And he thought he was going to go home to here, but wow, right? Looking back. And then he said, there's two important women I see in your life, one being your mother, that's now passed away, one being your mother, and another woman that you've known a long time, but haven't been in contact with, and you guys are going to reconnect. He said, that's you, babe, in the letter. And just things like that. I'm just like, the things that he would say, he would be like, Gina, I know something's going to happen. I'm going to get out of here. I've always thought I would only be here 6 years. I always thought 6 years. And he was right. He was there 6 years. And just like what he said, it was in his subconscious. And I think that's the reason that, I got divorced because of a stupid affair I had. And I was like, and then my whole life was just turned upside down. And then then he contacts me after I'm divorced. It's all just too wild. I mean, and people don't realize that these things aren't coincidences.
No, they're not at all.
Rhonda, were
Not.
you because it sounds like Gina and I were both married to someone else in some point of our lives. Were you ever married to someone other than Jim when you knew him?
Yes, I was married 29 years to a very abusive person.
Oh,
But I'm going to tell you something too, that whoever you were with, that's just another version of you too, because
they were
once I
soulmate.
found,
They definitely were not of me, but
well,
that's me personally.
I'm saying that you're going to deal with something that you have to deal with, another version or a lesson or something is embedded into that person. And what I mean by that is, once I started knowing the history of the other person, it made it very clear to me my life lessons on this side of the other life, because they were mirrored so much. Renee was very intolerant of people having vastly different opinions he didn't like. I mean, I've read about him, and he mirrors my first husband. And that would make sense that I was that way. I was in that lesson, even though I wasn't that way. I wasn't abusive, right? See what I'm saying? I'm not saying, oh, I'm mirroring myself. I'm saying that something from a past life is being played out in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean by that. I don't mean to say, oh, yeah, I really sure did. Yeah, I would really bust somebody around for 30 years. No, I wouldn't do that in a million years. But was I a hothead? Yeah, I was. Was I greedy? Well, that's why I couldn't understand. Why did I get such a mother that won't help me out at all? I've been through such hard times, and she's a millionaire, and she wouldn't give you 30 cents. And I thought, why am I a victim of that when everyone else has these wonderful, loving families that when they're down and out on their, rear ends, their family will at least loan them their car. You know what I'm saying? So then I realized, well, it's much easier to forgive people when you think, well, I might not have been a woman and I might not have been living in the year my mother's living in, but if I lived in 1650 and I was greedy and stingy, then, well, that shows I'm capable of it too. And
I want
so
to do my past lives.
that will tell a whole lot because I didn't realize that I was mimicking this person. I didn't realize I was just being, and he was 5'1" and I'm 5'1" and I'm fiery as I can be. I'm a fire sign, and so was he, and I can see it. Oh yeah, you want to disagree? And he was one of the 13th most intelligent men. I mean, 13th highest IQs that's recorded. Is he was one of the 13 highest IQs. Well, you know what? I'm humble now, but I can certainly say.
Well, you seem pretty smart to me, Rhonda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, but can you not see? Doesn't it make my story much more credible? It's very strange for a woman my age in the occupations I've been in to sit and talk about theomatics and angles of this. And I mean, the things I talk about even blow my mind. So, I mean, that's not normal unless I came from already having that within. That is within.
It's like the little children that they just play the piano like by.
Yes.
My friends,
Prodigies.
like the Titanic, like the kid that I told you about that is obsessed with Titanic, and he plays the piano like by ear, and
yes.
I mean that's just carrying over. I mean,
it comes with you. It comes with you, and that's why I think that the combined energy. Keep in mind, IQ is tied with energy. It's how much energy is in that vessel. How bright is this burning vessel? And don't they say in school, well, you're not very bright. We're going to have to send you to remedial reading. They use the word bright to describe intelligence. Well, they're bright. That child is bright.
And your lumen, too. By the way, there's a part in your gut that's called a lumen. Like the word light. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. Because what is light? It's information. It's information in the air. And I told you the other day, one of you, I don't remember which one of you I was talking to when I said the light of the air has all the information in it. And your phone's decoding it. That information's in the air. They just figured that out. And they're not going to tell you because you've got to keep in mind, they're hundreds of years ahead of us, the people that are in these higher places like Apple computers.
Well,
and
perhaps. I feel like it's a mix and mix. Well, maybe. So we're at an hour and 15 minutes. So we want to start. This is an excellent discussion. For our intro discussion.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap up and then we can plan for our next one? And
yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day. That would be fun.
And I want to say
sorry about my sound.
I just want to say this to you all too. Please don't let me how do I want to say anything that I don't mean to overload. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't mean to overload, but sometimes it's hard for me to gauge because it sits in my mind all the time. Yeah. So it's familiar to me.
Oh, I don't let me overload about, and embeddings and semantical valuation and classification and just AI nerdy things that apply to this life. But yeah, I hear you. It's all good.
I just wanted you to know that I'm aware, that I'm not trying to be, how do I want to say? I want to give you enough information that you can kind of have somewhere to go yourself. And I've
Yeah.
given you a huge hint with the numbers.
Well, do we want to? I think that's a good place for us to wrap this up. Is maybe if each of us, if we do decide to share this, externally, what would one thing that someone who's, lost their twin flame, they might be at whatever stage in the journey that that has helped you that you think would be good for other people to know for themselves?
I think for me, what I would like people to know is that there are thousands of us that are in your
I'm
shoes,
finishing this call, Everly.
and we kept hope alive, and we don't believe that that's the end, and neither should you. And it doesn't matter how dark or gloomy it gets, there are people you can reach out to that you'll find that will help illuminate the path. And none of us really know, I don't think, the exact end. So reach out. I want people to understand and look more at the things that are unseen, because it's the unseen that leads you there.
Yeah. Gina, what about you? Do you have anything you want to?
Oh, I'm telling you, listening to this book and picturing, like, because what Dolores Cannon mentions is I've heard, and you can even interpret like biblical, you know what I mean? And like
Yes.
even the hell and what
Yes.
it really is, and it makes so much more sense. And just knowing, just knowing that he's somewhere learning, and the thing that really helped me feel so much better is that even though I'm selfish and I wanted him, I would have waited for him for 7 more years, gladly. And I would take that now. It's perspective, because I used to look at his little release date on the website and it would say 2029. I'd be like, oh, it's forever. Well, now I would give anything, because now when you go there, it says deceased 10/31 2022. I'm like, I'll take the 2029, but I can't do that. So like one thing that was when they described like the orientation center, where when you pass that everybody greets you and you go to this thing and it's so beautiful that you can't. I was like, it seemed like it was the opposite of where he was in the prison. It was like the complete opposite. And so I'm like, okay, Gina, I'm much happier that he's at this place instead of that other place for 7 years, especially the way he was suffering. And that's true love, is that okay, I'm going to just sacrifice. I mean, if somebody would have asked me, I mean, I still would, because I'm human, would want to be selfish and say, no, I want him to stay where he was. But maybe now I can, with the love, because it's all about love, say I would want him to go to that other place instead. As much as I just, but I never got to like sleep with him. You know what I mean? I mean, it is what it is. So I have the hope, just educating myself and, meeting my like-minded people and like reading her stuff, and she's got so many things out there. I can't wait to read the Nostradamus. I say read, I listen. But that's what I would say, is just the more that you learn, the more that you take comfort, because you just believe. You just believe, and that's faith, and people have faith in their the God and whatever religion they are, and faith in that. Well, it gives you faith, that you just know that you will be together again. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. I guess I'll try to share my piece. My 6-year-old's in the background making noises, but there she goes. I gotta keep it classical, and it goes along with exactly what you two said, but it's meditate, and not meditate to, oh, go clear your mind. Meditate for a purpose, for a reason. You know, there's a billion reasons, you know, like allowing yourself time to integrate all this stuff, because it's one thing to notice patterns, which is where the information is. It's another thing to do like traditional research, like academic research, and you overload your brain with all this stuff. Like you have to actually integrate. And
True.
especially for someone who's lost someone, the way that we connect, you know, through these airwaves, through these things, through our subtle bodies, through our intuition, whatever you want to call it. And we each have our own different way of doing that. So no medium, no psychic is going to have the perfect answer for you. Only you do. And it's beautiful. Most beautiful thing about this journey is it's showing us that, again, we are their reflection. We love them so much. They love us so much. They're trying to tell us, you know, if only you could see you the way that I do, right? Like, could you imagine like looking at yourself, and instead of looking in the mirror and seeing like crow's feet, you're looking in the mirror and seeing just that cute way that your hair flips that you hate, but that your loved one just goes crazy for. Like that's where the magic is. Yeah. So
I used to say, oh, I'm fat today. He's like, don't you talk about my wife that way. I mean, he set the bar high, I'll tell you that. But yes, that was very good closing there, Lisa. I just had to throw that in because I just thought about it when you said that. Made me think about that. It's one of my favorite things that he used to say.
I think you are both beautiful ladies, and I love how like different we are.
Yay!
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed listening.
I'm so glad we all got together, because I really feel like we can help each other, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And doesn't it feel better to have knowing that the support is there? Even if I don't talk to you, I know that you're supported.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you ladies have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Okay, and we'll get together again next week.
I can't wait.
Yay! Go Galactic Light. What was it? Restoration.
What was it? Restoration.
I love it. I love it. It's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Love. Bye.
Bye.